Delighted to have a few minutes to talk with you today. We've spent a lot of time this week talking about students. Students are at the heart of our work, of course. They're the way we make our impact on the world. They are what we are passionate about in our own work. They're the ones that pay tuition, that give us jobs and have an educational enterprise to begin with. That educational enterprise is centered around students. It can't be any other way. Students are at the heart of our missions, what we actually do. And those missions, typically, regardless of the institution, embrace three things. Not always, but usually. And not always in these words, but in some version of these words. If you have a professional degree in music at your school, undergraduate or graduate, you're preparing professional musicians to be the best they can be and make their lives in music and impact their communities by doing it. That's our top priority, usually. The second one is, in most missions, we provide musical experiences both as listening and music making for our campus and off-campus communities in an effort to improve the quality of life and the culture where we are. Most missions have that too. And then the third mission that we usually see is the fact that we encourage faculty work in research and scholarship and performance throughout all our disciplines to add to the profession's compendium of great skill so that we can advance music for all time as a result of faculty work. That's true in all disciplines. It's true in music too. Students are at the heart of most of that. I would like to think, though, that students are also at the heart of what I believe is a very important advancement in our missions that we must consider. And I believe this largely because of a whole bunch of experience in music and higher ed, watching two things that I talked about at my last summit talk, which was the fact that we know we have to prepare professional musicians differently for a different world, and we know our society needs more outstanding and meaningful musical experiences in their lives to have a happier and healthier and safer and more hopeful and more fulfilled society. And those two things go hand in hand. Well, they don't just go hand in hand. If we look at it more carefully, when we prepare professional musicians to make a difference in the world, and the difference in the world is required, those two things intersect with us. It's our schools where those things come together. It's not the local opera company or a community orchestra or music churches or performing arts centers or at libraries or in the public schools. It's us. Those things intersect with us. And we're very intentional about helping students. My gosh, every time we get together, we're focused on curriculum or embedding values or something that has to do with improving the student experience and making them more able to make happy lives in music and to affect others in music. Very intentional about that. But we're accidental about the community's impact from the great music that we're helping them make. We're not intentional as we should be, about this impact on community. We prepare our students, we trust that they'll have the impact on the community that we hope they will, and that we'll live in a better society with more public good. I'd like to advance the notion that it is our responsibility in music schools to be more intentional about the public good. To think more about not just the preparation of the students, which is at our heart, but more about what we do actually ourselves in the public and model for students for their futures that gets at the public good. It's this next step in our missions. It's an enrichment of our mission to include and broaden to something that we don't typically broaden it to. We talk a lot about relevance. It is a primary purpose that we come together. I think about all my colleagues and mentors in this profession over the years, and we've been talking about relevance for years, and with every year it seems like we have a bigger challenge to be relevant, because society throws changes at us all the time. Their financial changes, their demographic and diversity challenges, their technological advancements, and we're reacting to them all the time. I mean, it's the center of what we talk about, is reacting to that change. And yet I believe that if we advance our mission to include this notion of advancing the public good, we'll get on the other side of that change. We'll be making that change. We won't be reacting to it. We'll be inspiring it. I think we do this already in many places. On our campuses, you can think of examples on your campuses, I'm sure, where you're leading some of the conversation. We do on our campus in leadership and entrepreneurship already. The other people on our campus look to us for that leadership, for that model. We're dictating the change and they're reacting to us. How could anything be more relevant than that? Are making our own change rather than reacting to our own change. I'd like to think that this whole notion of the advancement of our mission resonates with the vision that I had for the College Music Society when I became president 15 years ago. And that vision was this statement: we should establish a culture of living in and through music to improve the lives of Americans. And that is sort of the anchor of this additional enriched mission. And there are a variety of ways to do that, but I think there are two things our schools can think about to advance this mission, to open doors to thinking about how we can impact more of the public good by what we do in preparation and model for students and in the work that we do. And I'd like to say that these two doors have to do with a broadening definition of two of our core values. And when I say our core values, you've been working on core values all weekend, you've been embedding values in your work, you've become very familiar with this, and yet there are always a couple of values that are there. David's presentation on Friday, the achievement of excellence is so fundamental to our values that it was a non-negotiable. It was an apple off to the side, you know? So we didn't even talk about excellence because we just know we couldn't exist without the pursuit of excellence. It's like that AT&T commercial with the guy in the tattoo chair. Have you seen this? Where it says, okay, just won't do. And the guy says, the fellow doing the tattoo says, yeah, we're one of the tattoo parlors in town. And the dude's, shaking. He said, you mean you're one of the best tattoo parlors in town? And the guy, who looks like Billy Ray Cyrus, have you noticed that? He looks up at him and he says, something like that. Well, that's not what we do with excellence. We're not out there telling our story that it's something like that. Excellence is this non-negotiable big deal there that we're constantly championing, that we've built all of our institutions around, our traditions, our facilities, our faculty, our programs. Everything gets at the point of excellence. I think we should broaden the definition of excellence. I don't think excellence is just about training the virtuoso, performer, composer, scholar, teacher. What did I leave out there? Performer, composer, scholar, teacher, conductor. It's not about just training and preparing the virtuoso. Not even at conservatories is it just about that. Why can't our definition of excellence not be just about training the virtuoso, but about the pursuit of excellence? Because the pursuit of excellence is common to every human. You pick up an instrument or you open your mouth to sing, you want to do the best job you can do at it. You go to math class on the campus, you just want to get through it. But if you're in music, you're pursuing excellence even if you're not yet excellent. Why can't we make our schools and model for our students a broader definition of excellence that has to do with pursuing it and wanting to be better and finding some kind of meaning in music that goes beyond what we know is the meaning of music so far, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The other door I think we need to open to have a chance at this public good advancement mission is a re-examination and a broadening definition of success. And we know this. We talk about it all the time. Lots of people have written great stuff on what it means to change the definition of success for musicians in higher ed. And I don't have time to talk about it much now except to say this. We have traditionally measured success in this way. You have a goal when you're 18 and you meet it when you're 20-something, you're successful. You have a goal when you're 18 and you don't meet it when you're 20-something, you're not successful. We don't have programs that decide and help students figure out along the way different dreams so that they can imagine success differently when they reach these new dreams that may happen in their program or may not until after they're gone. We need to be aware of that, talk about that, model that for them. Broadening the definition of excellence and success makes it possible for us to imagine a power in music that I don't think we've completely accepted yet in most of what we do. And I want to close with that. And when I say close, it's the last thing I'm going to talk about, but it's going to take a few minutes. There are two examples that have really shaped my thinking in the last 2 to 3 years on this matter, on this idea that the music school has a responsibility to do more than we do currently with advancing the public good, with building that happier, healthier, safer, more hopeful, more fulfilled society. And one of them was our 2-year planning for and our 6-month commitment to a presentation of the Bernstein Mass last March. It took a half a semester commitment from 8 major portions of our music school and dance department to pull that off. Not to mention what it took in a marketing and development way and in all of the sound and support that it took to pull that off. And we were very involved in it. My wife and my 2 daughters and I, we just were sold into it. Both my daughters were in it. And at the evening, at the end of rehearsals, one of us or more were always weeping by virtue of the experience we were building, preparing this piece. And what we were learning along the way was not just the power of music as we understand it and as we really accept it and work hard on it, which is the power to move us, to give us emotional reaction, to have aesthetic experience that leads us to feel differently about ourselves. That's a great power, but it's not the only power. And yet that's what we were feeling as we were going home from rehearsal, weeping at what we were experiencing along the way. See, the thing about Mass that's so amazing, and that makes it this epic work, and is a perfect example of what's required to imagine a public good that we can't yet imagine, is that it's this mix of amazing intuitive music by a great genius. And not just a great genius who writes great music, but a great American genius who reaches into our chests and pulls out red, white, and blue with his music. All of this intuition, but then he could just count on, then he could just call up at a moment's notice to go with this extraordinary intention. And the intention was, I'm going to give an experience in this work that unites all people around that experience in a way that they cannot deny, that you can't walk away from. And it changes you as a result. And that result is not just being moved by music, but being compelled by music, by being inspired and to motivate and act because you were in a musical environment like this work. And we didn't realize that until we produced it and performed it. And you know why? Because it wasn't until we performed it that the whole community that it was built to experience it was experiencing it. At its heart, of course, this work is about a crisis of faith. And a crisis of faith is something every one of us has routinely. Now, this is a dramatic crisis of faith. It takes 14 minutes, and one guy is slapping you through the face for 14 minutes in his crisis of faith. I mean, you can't escape it. But what happens after that is a communal reconciliation of faith that just transforms you. And it's not just that it moves you, it compels you to want to be transformed in all your choices and all your decisions in the future about a reconciliation of faith, about a crisis of faith, and about a variety of other things we face in our lives every day. That's the great power, and it's not realized until it's all done together. And Bernstein is very intentional about that too, not only about this work, but about all his work. You don't get the power of music, you don't get the full potency of music unless it's shared. And we all know that, but this work takes that whole premise to a whole new level. And it's because we all have crises of faith. I have them every 10 minutes. Doubts, and sometimes it's one person or multiple people or my own conscience that helps lift me out of that doubt. But because we have all those doubts and we're watching this and the people performing on the stage are doubting as they're performing, I mean, it's just magical. And it really signals to us that we're more than just moved by watching it. We're compelled to act by watching it, by making decisions differently in our future lives. And I'll close with my second example. About 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to hear Representative John Lewis, one of the last of the great civil rights heroes, congressman from Atlanta, speak to a group of us lobbying on the Hill in Washington, D.C. at an advocacy fly-in. And he simply said, as a part of his short talk, that music gave wings to the civil rights era. Music gave wings to the civil rights era. If you study music in society and social justice, you know that this is true. But to hear John Lewis say it and mean it was very moving, inspiring. So I went up to him afterwards to try and talk to him about it. We didn't have much time, but I reminded him he was going to be on our campus being a commencement speaker and only a few months after that. And that I'd love to talk to him then, and every dean gets a little time with the commencement speakers before we go out. And when I talked to John Lewis, I saw him, I reminded him of this speech, and he jumped right in and he said, you know, I should have said that differently. What I should have said was, There would have been no civil rights movement without the music. Now, I got weak in the knees when I heard him say that. I mean, I kind of know that that's true, but when you hear it from a person who was singing on the bridge, it's totally different than you're just sort of knowing it. It was a really profound moment, and I asked him relative to this whole concept of the civil rights movement not being able to exist without music. I said, well, you know, Nelson Mandela felt that way too, and so did the seizing of apartheid. And he said, yes, and then he said to me, I mean, this was an extraordinary back and forth. He said, you know, the people of Argentina were oppressed from a variety of different totalitarian regimes over generations, and tango helped them get through that. And then I mentioned to him, I mean, it was like we were back and forth, a little like you'll see in Radical Reimagination in just a minute, where we're constantly back and forth with one another. And then I said to him, the Horowitz recitals thawed the Cold War. I mean, it wasn't the fact that we were moved by Horowitz playing The Stars and Stripes Forever. It's the fact that we were compelled to act because we heard him play The Stars and Stripes Forever. I then had an opportunity to see John Lewis in the Atlanta airport just a few months ago. And he was sitting in the Delta Club room having a glass of water, and I walked over, and he said, Dean, have a seat. He calls me Dean. I call him Sir. Everybody calls him Sir. He must be Paul McCartney. We call him Sir. And we had struck up a little conversation, and he asked me at that point, what's on your mind, Dean? Now, this guy, I don't know how much you know about John Lewis. There's no one any more determined in the world than John Lewis. He doesn't get distracted by things that keep him from doing what is his calling, and his calling is to make sure that every American, regardless of where they come from or how much money they have or the color of their skin, has equal access to opportunity. And he will not budge from that position. Everything he does serves that position, including the fact that he never smiles and never frowns. He's determined. You've seen him on TV. It's always that same expression. Now, he does seek out information. He does ask questions, and he asked me a question. What's on your mind, Dean? What are you up to now? And so I took a big breath, and I said, I am wondering whether musical institutions in our country, professional ones, educational ones, and especially colleges of music, where there's this interaction of preparing students and being concerned about the public good, I'm wondering if it's possible for these music institutions to be the pathway to the creation of MLK's beloved community. And the corner of his mouth went up a little. He smiled and he said, that would really be something, Dean. That would really be something. We are 9 days out from Martin Luther King's 90th birthday. It is MLK weekend. Let us decide that because of the power of his vision and the power of our own ability to shape young people in music and affect communities through that, and by our own work like Mass and other things, that we will accept this responsibility and do something intentional to make a better world by virtue of the work we do and not just the students we produce. I urge you, please, to take the great work that you've done this week, that we'll learn more about in just a few minutes in the reveal, about embedding values, and think bigger about our missions as you go and embed values in your schools. And like I said last time at the summit, if we do this, we cannot fail. Thank you so much.